Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar this month. The topic of the webinar is why I joined a startup after 22 years. And we will be joined by Leandi, Grimsell and Marius, Botha. And I really hope that you enjoy the chat. To start off, I'd just like to introduce myself. So my name is Krystle Hastings, and I am the head of marketing at FinChatbots, and I will be your host for this webinar. Our agenda today is we'll start off with an introduction where I tell you a little bit about why we have these meetups and what we're hoping to accomplish. Then I'll hand over to Marius and Leandi so that they can introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about who they are. And then we'll start the discussion about career goals, career ambitions, and understanding the journeys that you can take along the way. During the discussion, I will launch 2 polls that you can vote, and then I'll read out the results once they come through. And then also during the discussion, if you would like to ask a question or contribute, please post your questions or your comments in the Q&A section, and then I'll introduce those for you during the conversation. And then we'll give thanks and conclusion and wish you well on your lovely weekend ahead. So to start the introduction, we started a meetup group about 2 years ago. We've reached just over 1,800 members. The name of the meetup group is quite a mouthful. It's Johannesburg AI, Machine Learning and Conversational AI. And it is hosted by FinChatbot, but supported by French Tech. And I'll tell you a little bit more about each one of those companies a little bit later. Our goal with having these webinars, it's really all about creating a community. So we would like to create a community of entrepreneurs, tech enthusiasts, engineers, investors, corporates, and students. The idea of this community is to have an ecosystem that fully supports each other because the one cannot work without the other. We want to engage on topics like entrepreneurship, startup life and tips, deep learning, AI, and chatbots. We also would like to start having more hackathons, and we are actually planning one for the beginning of next year, so stay tuned for that. We would like to also help people do meeting and pitching on the investor front, and it's all about shared learning at the end of the day. Here are some of our amazing speakers that have spoken for our meetups before. We've got Natalie R., Amira Abbas, Rossetti, Alex, Kieran, and Julian. All of these people are experts in different areas of technology and are all truly, truly talented. As I mentioned, this whole group was started by FinChatbot and is supported by French Tech. So FinChatbot, what we do is we create conversational AI solutions for the financial services industry. And French Tech is helping to build a tech ecosystem in Johannesburg, Cape Town, but also around the whole world. And they're all about trying to get entrepreneurship to really flourish to help build the economy. We also have with us today Marius, who is the Managing Director of Girls in Tech, as well as the FinChatbot Sales Executive. I'll let Marius tell you a little bit more about Girls in Tech, but it is truly inspirational what they are trying to accomplish. And that's, you know, the basic definition is trying to get more women into the technology space. And it's truly incredible what they are doing. And then we've got Leandi, which is the founder of the Human Priority Company and is also focusing on the career element of getting more women and also young individuals involved in the tech space. So there is perfect alignment with both institutions, and I look forward to hearing a little bit more about them during the talk. I would just like to show you the FinChatbot team. They are the team that help make these events possible. We always like to highlight our little dog, Bilu, who will be moving overseas soon, so we'll miss him a lot. And before I hand over the discussion to Marius and Leandi, I would like to leave you with a quote. And I think this is a perfect quote by Timothy Ferriss. He was actually the person who wrote a book called 4-Hour Work Week. If you haven't read that book, I definitely recommend it. Truly interesting. It's all about how he reshaped his life to really suit what would fulfill him. And his quote was, "The question you should be asking isn't what do I want or what are my goals, but what would excite me?" Because it's all about fulfillment. We spend more than half our lives in the workspace, so we need to really ensure that we enjoy what we're doing. And before I hand over, I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us and supporting us for our meetups. And to also help us build the community and collaboration and ecosystem. If you would like to know more about FinChatbot, French Tech, Girls in Tech, or the Human Priority Company, you can visit their website and get in touch. You can also email me and I'll help you get in touch. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Marius and Leandi so we can begin the talk about why I joined a startup after 22 years. Over to you, Marius.
Thanks, Krystle. Yeah, I'm Marius Botha. I recently joined FinChatbot about 3 months ago. And I guess the title kind of refers to my journey to a certain extent. Before then, I was 22 years at the Fashini Group, which was an amazing company to work for. But yeah, I decided that it's time for something outside of corporate, which prompted a lot of discussion about, why would you even do that? And during COVID of all times as well. So I think a lot of discussion over the last couple of months in terms of careers and what people want from their careers and how do you shift around. And I think obviously, the pandemic challenged a lot of people in terms of what it means to have a career these days and what energizes you at the end of the day and what's possible as well. So yeah, I made this shift to a startup, which has been an interesting journey, and I think we'll unpack it a little bit more when we start talking about it. But yeah, obviously I'm based in Cape Town. I've got 4 kids and a wife and 3 dogs. And yeah, so it's been an interesting journey, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of the thoughts and ideas that I've seen over the last couple of months transpire. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Marius. Maybe we can bring one of your dogs up here to Joburg because Bilu's leaving us.
Absolutely.
Leandi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Krystle. Like Krystle mentioned, my name is Leandi Grimsell. I currently stay in Johannesburg, Bryanston, and I started my company called the Human Priority Company in June 2020 after I resigned just before hard lockdown and everything, you just didn't know where you wanted to go. I started the company with the main focus on empowering women in STEM careers as well as the youth in South Africa, and also focusing on HR consulting. The reason for that is I found that I really like the whole talent management aspect in companies when I got the opportunity in 2011 to work for a JSE listed company, specializing in IT recruitment. And from there, I then explored human resource management a little bit more, working for a multinational job board called PNet, and where I then ended in a startup, but decided that what motivates me and what makes me happy will be to empower other women and help them with the experience that I've obtained. And I think, like Marius said, I'm also very excited when we go into the talk to also explain a little bit more about why I went and started my own company after so long.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Leandi and Marius. So let's jump straight into the discussion with our first question, which is, what has guided your career choices and what does a fulfilling career mean to you? I'll start off with Marius.
Obviously, I've been around the block a couple of times, I guess. So, I mean, I think what started my career was, obviously, I never actually was interested in computers at all. My mother at the time worked at the Technicon, actually, and she said, listen, you don't know what you want to do, so just go and study computers, BTech degree at the time, whatever. So it was kind of this kind of default decision saying, well, go and study the BTech degree and then you've got something to fall back on, actually. So there wasn't a lot of thought behind. Obviously, became quite interested in technology from that point on. And I think looking back in hindsight, obviously, it was very much an autopilot kind of process. You go through it, you get a degree, the corporates come and recruit at varsity and at technicons, whatever. Then you jump into work life all of a sudden. Now you're part of a corporate. I joined a UTI Sun Careers at the time for a short period, and then I joined the Foschini Group, and that was 23 years ago. So it's almost been unfortunately almost automatic that where there wasn't a lot of consultation about, there wasn't thought of startups or doing your own thing necessarily back in the day. Maybe there were people obviously, but there wasn't a lot of discussion about opportunities like that, or being a free agent or something like that, or trading your talent for any other opportunities as well. So I got stuck into the corporate life, and and I think that's part of the discussion. You get sucked into this kind of corporate mentality and climbing the ladder and promotions and job security and those kind of things, which is not a negative thing, obviously. I think you just get into that kind of rat race to a certain extent, and it takes obviously very strong will to make sure that you're continuously evolving as a person as well, because you can easily just go into a normal kind of career progression kind of space where you're just chasing the next promotion and those kind of things. And obviously it takes a lot of self-reflection and self-awareness to start challenging yourself and say, listen, is this my end game? I studied, I'm gonna join a corporate and I'm gonna retire, and that's it. It just feels very kind of pre-planned and almost preempted, actually, to a certain extent. So I think, luckily for myself, during my stint at the Foschini Group, I reinvented myself over the years, as and when I got bored a little bit. And luckily for me, the Foschini Group allowed me to do that, allowed me to hone my skills, evolve, mature in certain other areas as well. So which has been fantastic. I think the risk, obviously, is that a lot of people don't do that. And technology specifically, I'm a yellow person. I'm very comfortable speaking up and challenging the status quo, but sometimes in the technology space you don't have people that are willing to do that or take responsibility for their own career, and I think that's a risk, obviously, when you get stuck into that corporate and you end up 65 and retiring, and you haven't really challenged yourself to kind of continuously improve or continuously evolve and things like that as well. So I guess I was lucky to a certain extent that the Foschini Group gave me those opportunities to kind of reinvent myself over the years, which has been great. At the same time, I got to a point where I realized, 22 years is a long time. I'm not getting any younger. What's life outside of TFG? And I made that decision in the beginning of the year before the pandemic kind of came out. Actually, I kind of said to my manager, listen, I'm probably going to leave this year. I think it's time to look for something outside. Luckily for myself, I didn't feel like I had to do it. I was actually very happy at TFG. It's a fantastic organization to work for. So I made it for the right reasons. There was no fear in terms of, I need to get out of this place. It was more about, I need to see what's life outside of TFG, actually. So I kind of just, there's a couple of things that transpired in terms of, okay, cool. In the second half of my career, what's my exit strategy here? How do I want to see the second part of my career play out? So I guess I took the kind of leap of faith and said, listen, I'm going to go. And I actually ended up resigning from TFG without actually having another job at the time. And then obviously I knew Antoine, who's our CEO at FinChatBot, for a couple of years now. And I started talking to him and he said, listen, why don't you come and join us? Because that'll be a nice change of pace. And it's been an amazing change of pace, moving from a corporate to a startup. And obviously moving into a sales position, which is completely, outside of my skill set necessarily. I see Mark Fletcher. I've been chatting to Mark. He's also on the line here. I've been chatting to him over the last couple of months, getting his advice because he's on the other side of the fence. He was in the sales and business development side of things as well. So it was kind of a nice, challenge. And I think, I like the fact that it was putting myself into a space where I felt uncomfortable and I had to kind of like reinvent myself again. And I'm fortunate that I had that opportunity, obviously. But I haven't looked back, actually. I mean, I still miss the people at TFG, but I mean, when you join a startup, there's not a lot of time and to kind of wallow or think about previous careers. You just get going, and the pace is obviously completely different from corporate. And I think that's one of the topics that we want to talk about, you know, the benefits of being in corporate and the benefits of being in a startup. And I don't think it's, neither one are better than the other necessarily. It's different. It's horses for courses, and depending on where you are in your career, there's a lot of benefits in being either of those spaces, actually. I think me moving from corporate to a startup obviously adds value to FinChat in terms of my experience of being in corporate for a while. So it's been an interesting journey, but can't say I have any regrets. I don't think there are any wrong decisions in life. I think you take different routes at the end of the day. You can't really judge yourself too much and say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. If you didn't do it, you probably wouldn't be who you are. So it's been an interesting journey, and you know, I'm so glad I made the leap of faith, actually. And who knows, maybe one day I'll go back to corporate, but at this point, I think I'll fall asleep if I go back to corporate again. I think the startup life is just so fast and so energized, obviously, that it's a hard shift to make. So and then in terms of goals in tech, we did some internal development programs in TFG the last couple of years about giving people opportunities to get involved with technology. And we called it Developer at Heart, which is a nice program. And we gave people some technical training, people that aren't developers necessarily, call center people, storage engineers. And so we created this little curriculum for the people to kind of get involved in development, because sometimes it's this aspirational thing. You know, people want to move into it, but they don't see the opportunities, or they don't feel comfortable having the conversation even with their manager. So we created a bit of a curriculum, and we invited people in the group at the time to say, listen, come and join if you're interested in moving into development. And we also kind of framed it in a nice program, because we had self-awareness and EQ, interpersonal skills, a lot of the soft stuff with it as well, because we all know that technology is more than just the technical skills. So that program actually was quite well received. And then one of my managers at the time said, listen, why don't you do something around females specifically? And I'm going like, yeah, good idea. We should do that. And I started looking around for what would that look like, because it's not completely the same. And I remember seeing Girls in Tech, because the ex-friend of mine from varsity, she was running Girls in Tech in Australia at the time. And I always followed her, and I saw the programs that they were running, and I thought, that's pretty cool. And so instead of us reinventing the wheel, maybe we should just partner with somebody like Girls in Tech that can actually facilitate a lot of that kind of programs and empowerment programs and training for us. And then I found out there's no Girls in Tech in South Africa, actually. So I contacted my friend and said, listen, you know, should I just start Girls in Tech in South Africa? She goes like, is it weird if a guy does it? I said, she goes like, no, more guys should get involved with these kind of things, actually, you know. And then I applied to start the chapter, and I was lucky to have been approved. And that was a year ago now, actually. And I've put together a fantastic advisory board, and we've been running ever since. And it's just been, I think everybody needs that kind of part of their career that is not about making money. It's not about your own career development necessarily. It's something about giving back. You need that part of your life as well, that you can give back to people. So that was a really interesting journey. And I think in hindsight, that probably prompted me to make the move outside of corporate as well, because all of a sudden I started seeing a broader opportunity to kind of add value and to be in other spaces as well, where when you're in a big corporate, you just think TFG or you just think Vodacom, whatever. So I think that was probably the seed that kind of started the whole thinking process of maybe I should leave, because I kept telling people, oh, I'll retire, TFG is fine, whatever. I love TFG. And I think the Girls in Tech thing kind of made me think about, oh, there's a whole new world, there's a whole other world outside of TFG or Vodacom or whatever. I think that's kind of where it started, actually. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I can't say I have any regrets.
Amazing. That is a really, really interesting journey after spending such a long time in corporate, and to make that transition, not just to a startup, but actually also having a charter that focuses on, you know, women in that technology space. So that is really interesting. One thing that I was wondering, I mean, you mentioned that change in pace that happens when you go over to a startup. So we'll jump into that a little bit just now, but I'd love to understand how that pace kind of changed when you switched over. Leandi, would you like to tell us about what's guided your career and what a fulfilling career means to you?
Yeah, sure. I always make this joke, but it's probably the truth. My career choices was most of the time because of mistakes I've made. Because I think you go through life and you make a lot of mistakes, but like you said, Marius, earlier, it actually guides you in the direction you're supposed to go into. I believe that everything happens for a reason. So after matric, I'm actually a big drama queen. I wanted to start acting, but I had to go get something behind my name. So I went to UJ and I studied education for a year, and I didn't want to do that. So I had to start work. My parents said, sorry, they're not going to pay for me because drama is not a real, acting is not a career. So I started to work, and I funded myself through method acting at a school in Pretoria. And then I realized, but I need to make money because I can't be a struggling actress my whole life. So I got into sales, so on and so forth. And that is when Communicate Personnel gave me the opportunity in 2011 in recruitment. I mean, it is also sales, but yeah, you're selling people. It sounds terrible, but it was a sales position, but in more of a human resources direction. They gave me so much opportunities. They realized that I'm actually a very good trainer. So they placed me within training and development, and they upskilled myself. And eventually I was promoted to the HR department focusing on skills development. And the sales director of PNet actually then approached me in 2015, asking me if I don't want to come and work for them as a trainer, going out to the clients, tell them a little bit more at PNet and how to use the system effectively. Because I think a lot of candidates, especially, they don't necessarily understand how to use a system as well as the client, and therefore I think that is where the gap lies when it comes to recruitment. So that was my accountability or responsibility to train both the candidates and clients on that side. When I was working at PNet, the company partnered up with Code for Change. It was a CSI project that actually go into the rural communities, and they upskill kids from grade 7 up to matric in coding, HTML, CSS, a little bit of Java. And the nice thing about that was, they actually then opened the door into technology for me. I will probably never be a coder or do anything technically, but it actually sparked my interest to go into tech. That makes sense. Then I was approached to actually head up the human development department at a startup that was only 3 years old, into a completely different industry. It was more printing. And I thought, hey, this is also, like Marius says, like, you're so used to corporate, the red tape, just doing stuff that other people say you must do. And that's why I took up this opportunity. Unfortunately, I am somebody that likes to work strategically, and I like working with people, and people relations to me are very, very important in a company. And that is what I stand for. I mean, you can have the best employees in your company, but if you do not have great leadership, your company might not work, or maybe it will not work at all. And I took the decision to, instead of being depressed in the morning to go to work because of people relations, I'd rather take the step in the direction and start my own company. It was very, very hard. I need to make money because I just got engaged actually in hard lockdown. So, but I also want to uplift and motivate other individuals to say, you know what, if you have a great idea, you do not need to have investors or 100,000 Rand in the bank to start your own company. If you have an idea, if you have the motivation, if you have people that inspire you, you can actually do it through hard work, through fast paced, because now you have to do everything. You don't have people to necessarily do things for you. And that is, in a nutshell, my career, what guided my career choices to where I am today. And yeah, I think at the end of the day is I just want my career to be fulfilled by helping other people, especially strong and exceptional women. And because Marius, I think you said yesterday, women, we do actually, if you have us in a company, we will take you the extra mile. And I think that is what our country needs as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Leandi. I see. So you said that mistakes are essentially good in helping you to find your kind of right path. And I know around the world there is sort of charters where people stand up and they talk about their key mistakes in their life that help sort of shape them into who they are, or to guide them in terms of getting onto the right path. So that's really interesting. The second question is, okay, so for you, Marius, you moved from TFG after all those years over to FinChatbot as a startup. And Leandi, you actually made the transition to start your own business. So I think this is a question more for Marius in terms of how do you go about applying to join a startup? How does that happen?
Well, mine specifically, I think it started with having a relationship with Antoine. So I think it boils down to networking at the end of the day, that, you know, in the startup community, your loyalty is to other people in the startup industry, actually, where in a corporate, it's very much a vertical kind of loyalty in terms of you're loyal to your manager and to the company. And I think in industry like tech, it's more of a horizontal loyalty and networking that you build. And I think that's something that is important, actually, in terms of future career opportunities, that you have to look at networking with people. Luckily for myself, I mean, I like meeting new people all the time. I mean, that's something that energizes me. And I think I was lucky that obviously I introduced FinChatbot to the Foschini group at the time, actually. So started forming a relationship with the company at that point already. And I have to give kind of compliments to Antoine. I mean, Krystle, you know Antoine as well. I mean, he's such an engaging, leader that I think I was attracted to him, at least professionally, not physically. I was attracted to him as a person in terms of just engaging with him and his energy and his inspiration in terms of how he felt about his company. So it was kind of a weird thing that I said to him at the time when we started talking about FinChatbot as an opportunity. Maybe it's probably the only company that I would have been interested in joining, actually, because I was keen to do my own thing. Actually, I kind of started my own company after I left, or I resigned from TFG already. So I was going to freelance it for a couple of years just to kind of get out of the corporate kind of space a bit. And I guess the only other opportunity would be a startup. And the only startup at the time that I felt I was inspired by was FinChatbot, actually. And a lot of that had to do with the relationship that I've had with Antoine over the last 2 years, actually. So it wasn't a big leap of faith. Once you decide that you're willing to go on your own, joining a startup is probably a little bit of a less risky move than just doing your own thing. But I think the startup thing was, I mean, I've always liked to see myself as somebody that operated like a startup, even within a corporate kind of space. I like to do something that's not necessarily mainstream. I don't like to follow the rules necessarily. I don't like corporate hierarchies or red tape, whatever. I rather apologize than ask for permission when I do things. Sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. But that's kind of been the way that I always like to operate. So a startup kind of felt right for me as well. It was still a big adjustment in terms of moving to a startup, in terms of really feeling the pace. And now and then when I'm in a meeting with you guys and I say, okay, guys, we'll do this and we'll chat again in 2 weeks. And people would look at me, what, 2 weeks? no. This is a startup, dude. You don't wait 2 weeks. We want to talk again tomorrow or next week at the latest, whatever. When a corporate is like, you have a meeting, okay, cool, we'll get together next month again and we'll see where we are at. And the startup, that's just not going to happen, obviously. It's just a different thing. So I don't think in terms of applying, it probably was an easier process than what most people might have to go through, because I kind of already had a good relationship with Anton, and he said, listen, I think I've got an opportunity for you. I still had to kind of jump through a couple of hoops. I had to go and chat to Romain and Raphael and get grilled a little about who do you think you are? Do you think you can just join a sales team? You're in corporate, you don't know what you're talking about, whatever. But it was an interesting discussion, and obviously I've got a lot of people in the industry that guided me. Like, I spoke to like Mark Fletcher that's on the line here as well, and I said to him, listen, is it a risky move? Can I go into sales? And I think Mark said at the time, it's a different kind of thing to be in. Sales is different than being in an internal IT team or something like that. So I knew there was some risk, but I mean, I guess that's what kind of got me energized, actually. I want that kind of challenge to say, listen, this is not exactly who you are, or you don't have exactly the same kind of skills, whatever. But I think at the end of the day, it all boils down to people relationships anyway. If you can have good relationships, if you can build strong relationships with people, a lot of the stuff just falls into place after that anyway. And I think, it speaks to this kind of soft skills that we all know is very important in corporate or startup. Being able to engage with people, being able to apply empathy when you're engaging with people. I think it just translates to a lot of different roles anyway, whether it's in startup or in corporate. So I guess I knew that I had those kind of skill sets to a certain extent in terms of my career thus far. And I knew those would transfer quite nicely into a startup space anyway, because I do get energized by people, and I like solving problems, and I like helping people. So I knew that it doesn't matter if I'm going into sales or marketing or development or program management, those skills are going to, put me in good stead anyway. So it wasn't too much of a stretch. But yeah, that was kind of the process in terms of joining the startup. Actually, I think there was obviously during the COVID stuff, it kind of felt uncomfortable, and I was kind of in between this decision: should I, shouldn't I? And that was the worst part, just not making the decision. And once I decided, okay, cool, I'm going to do this thing, everything kind of just fell into place, and everything kind of started feeling right again, whatever. Because like Leandi said, it feels like mistakes, but there's no real mistakes actually. We're not saving lives here, whatever. You're just making a career change. And if you're willing to take the learnings, then there's no real mistakes at the end of the day. There's just learnings at the end of the day. So I'm learning a lot, but I haven't looked back. It's been a good decision.
Amazing. Yep. It's definitely, I think the startup space, and this is sort of one of the initiatives, this meetup, where it's all about networking, speaking to people, sharing knowledge. That's very much the startup space. And it opens up doors that you couldn't even imagine you would speak to, and the relationships, even the relationships we've built with the speakers over the time, it's been exceptional. For you, Leandi, I mean, you started your own business in COVID, and things are going really well for you. So how is that process? Where did you start? How did you take that leap of faith? And maybe you can also, because you're in that recruitment space, maybe you can also kind of weigh in on that interview style as well, in looking at sort of maybe a corporate versus a smaller company or a startup.
Perfect. I think the reason I was able to start this business was because I have great friends and family and a great fiance. So they motivated me and pushed me into that direction to say, listen, don't go and now say you're going to do it, actually do it. So I had a lot of help from them. I'm lucky enough to have friends in various aspects of corporate, they in finance, engineering, tech, they lawyers. So they could give me a lot of insight into what I need to actually start my business and how to actually push forward in order to make sure I succeed. I think at the end of the day, you need to, like I said earlier, you need to have your idea and you need to build that foundation from the floor up. And then also empower yourself and also build on your skills. I never knew how important marketing was in a business. I really didn't. And I think that is where you have to start. You need to build your website. You need to make sure your digital space is up and going. So I actually taught myself how to build my websites through GoDaddy, which is a fabulous tool. I'm studying my digital and marketing diploma, and then I've put all the elements together. There's a lot of things that in hindsight I would have changed, that I've realized, listen, it's not as effective as what I thought it was going to be, but that is how you build on your company. As long as you still know where your focus lies and what you want to achieve at the end of the day, and what the point is you want to make at the end of the day, I think that you will succeed. I've been lucky enough to have a lot of people through networking that is now my clients. And just to add to Marius, to apply for a startup, I also think networking and word of mouth is a very important thing. If you want to join a startup, you're not going to find necessarily positions via your job boards and LinkedIn, because they do not necessarily recruit from those platforms. Just to add to where you will go for recruiting, that was the question you asked, Krystle, and the different ways of the interview styles. With corporate, I believe they very much qualification driven still. And I sometimes find it a little bit worrying, because I believe that somebody with a diploma and experience is just as valuable as somebody with an honors degree. They might not have all the theoretical experience, that you learn through books, but they have the practical experience, where I find in startups and smaller companies, that is what they will look at. They will look at more experience and maybe with a diploma or a certificate. There's a lot of gems out there, and I feel that a lot of people miss out on these exceptional candidates because they did not have enough money to go through a University of Pretoria or a UCT or whatever. And I think that is what we need to change. So if you are a person that would like to go into a startup, the interview process is actually longer, that I've found that, than a corporate, because people are not sure yet where they want to go and what they need to achieve through their job descriptions, etc. So yeah, I think if you are a person that doesn't have a degree or honors or a master's or an MBA from a good school, then you go speak to people in startups and smaller companies, because they will give you the opportunities. And I say will because they're open to innovation and creativity, and I see that is one of the things that people say they're leaving their corporate jobs for, because corporates do not necessarily look for creativity and innovation, and you will find that startups and newer companies do.
Just to add to that, I mean, something that has stuck with me my whole career, when I was still studying, in my third year, UTI Sun Couriers actually, they came to do recruitment actually, and their CIO at the time was Malcolm Sainsbury. He's an ex-Rhodes lecturer, fantastic guy. I mean, he's probably the first guy that really inspired me from a professional point of view. And they came down, and I was studying in PE at the time, and they came down, and obviously, as a student, you're kind of very proud of your accomplishments already, which you haven't really done anything yet, but you've got this degree, a 4-year degree, BTech degree. So you've got this view that, okay, cool, I've got this degree now. You almost feel a little bit more entitled all of a sudden, and you feel like, okay, cool, these people want me now because I've got this degree. And a lot of corporates think that way. But when I was having the interview with Malcolm at the time, And I think I was trying to share with him what we did in the degree and what subjects we did and what projects we did. And he stopped me mid-sentence and he says, "I don't care about your degree." I'm going like, okay, hold on. And he says, "The only thing that tells me that you've got the ability to learn. That's it." And I think there was something in that triggered me at the time, saying, you know, all through my career when I was interviewing people, I didn't actually worry about the degree. I mean, it's nice to see that they've got a degree that shows that they can apply themselves and they can finish something off and they can learn something, obviously. But more and more, and specifically the last couple of years or five years, when I would interview somebody, it would be more about, you know, what this person's personality is and what is the energy like, you know? Are they somebody that wants to continuously improve themselves, actually, that want to add value, that want to build relationships? I think those are the things that carry a lot more weight, actually. And now you see what's happening with the big tech companies as well. There's no prerequisite qualification now. There's no degree that you have to join Google or Facebook or Microsoft, whatever. So the pennies dropped. I think a lot of other companies are lagging a little bit behind, where when you see the job posts go out and there's like a qualification required, or you need to have this degree, I'm going like, what are you doing? You know, I think we're missing out on a lot of good people because we don't add it. We don't put enough weight on those softer skills that we know translates to everything else at the end of the day. If you can build relationships, if you can have empathy with people, with people's problems, whatever, you're going to be designing better solutions at the end of the day. You can have the best technical skills. If you don't know how to design good solutions that solve people's problems, it's useless, actually. It's just like you've got a tool, but you don't know how to use it properly. So it's always about the softer skills. I felt over the years that I've knew was more important, that I tried to focus on more. And I think Malcolm kind of planted the seed back in the early 90s, when he said, listen, that just tells me that you can learn, and that's it, actually. And I think that's important for younger people to keep in mind, in terms of that, you know, the skills that's really going to set you apart from other people, that's going to be a differentiator for yourself, is not necessarily the degree or anything like that, actually. And these days you can learn anything, actually, if you really wanted to. A friend of mine asked me the other day that his cousin wanted to go and study, and he says, well, what should they go and study? I said, well, don't go and study. Go and do a short course on UiPath and become an RPA developer if you want to become an RPA. And you can travel the world doing that, actually, and that's going to take you a couple of weeks instead of doing a 3-4 year degree or diploma. I think the whole ecosystem has changed in terms of what does it mean to actually develop a skill. If you need to go to university, and obviously there's some profession that you need to go to get the qualification, but specifically in the tech side of things, I mean, if I have to start from scratch, I'm not doing a 4-year degree again, basically. I mean, I'm not going to waste 4 years on that, actually. There's so much that you can learn, and so fast if you're willing to apply yourself. I mean, like Linda said, he's given himself 6 months to learn data science and machine learning, whatever. And I can see that Linda's the kind of guy that's going to do it, obviously. So I think young people should just, you know, look at those opportunities, actually. You know, a degree, if companies are looking for a degree, then it's probably not the right company for you anyway, in terms of really being able to develop your own skill. Because all the stuff that I learned at Technicon, I didn't apply any of it when I started working, actually. All the stuff that I really started honing was stuff that I honed in my job, on, you know, working with people, working with technology. So I think the whole kind of minimum requirement has changed now, actually. I think being more self-aware, focusing on your own self-actualization, focusing on your own soft skills, on your people skills, actually. I think understanding what you really want, knowing what you really want, because the worst thing can be that you study for 4 years and that's not really what you want to do. So figure out what you want to do. And I guess it ties us back to the kind of gap year concept as well. You know, make sure you know what you want to do. What is your passion, actually? And if you really find your passion, you'll probably get paid well for you know, turning that into a talent eventually anyway.
Sorry, Krystle, if I can just add quickly to what Marius said. I believe strongly that somebody can teach you a skill. Nobody can teach you behavior, right? And that is very important to remember as well. I mean, and even if it takes you up to, I only knew what I wanted to do when I was 27. So 1 year might not be enough. You just need to find where you want to go. And I said, as soon as I start employing people for my business, there will be 5 specific things that I would look for. I would look for somebody that's got experience and, of course, a proven record of doing so. But they need to enjoy what they are doing. They have to fit in and aspire to add culture to my business. I think that is very important, because if you can do that, you can be an advocate for that company. If you don't have a passion for the company you work for or what you do, what are you doing there? And I found that in previous companies, and that is where people go and they're depressed and they don't want to go to work. You need to, as much as a company choose you, you need to choose that company as well. And I think that's where it fits in, but Marius, you need to make sure you know exactly what you want to do and then do it. And then make sure you've got the passion for that, because that is how you're going to succeed. Nobody's going to succeed if you do not like what you do. And I mean, there's always time to change your mind and just do what you want to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I can see that the attendees who have joined are in full agreement as well. And I think, you know, from being in the startup space for a while now, you know, when we do interviews and we're looking for people to join our team, number one, because we're rather small, we have to be careful of who we take on board, because we can't afford to have anybody who holds the company back. And the second element is we kind of need self-starters. So as you say, they know how to do something, not just kind of the theory behind it, which is what you learn in the book, but rather Googling it, figuring it out. And there's so many resources online to do that. So there's so many more opportunities to become a shining star in your particular area of interest. So I think that's super, super interesting. We are approaching the end, but maybe an interesting question could be, you know, say I'm new in a career or I'm looking for a career change. How do I know what type of company suits me? You know, would I be more suited, for example, to a corporate company or a startup company, or maybe as an entrepreneur? So how do you kind of determine those factors? And maybe we can start with you, Leandi.
That's an interesting question. I live by 5. When I interview somebody, I use the 5 F's method. Okay, so it stands for family, freedom, fun, fortune, and fit. Okay, out of those 5, I then ask somebody to choose their top 3. So if family is most important, if fortune is second most important, and if thirdly, fit is most important, that will be my 3. So if I'm then sitting in an interview, I want to then assess if this is the company's values as well. If I have a family, will they allow me to leave an hour earlier to go pick up my child from school? Or are they completely against it? Fortune, am I going to get the remuneration that I really would like to? Is there growth potential? Do I have bonuses? If that is very important to you, that is what you have to assess out. You need to find out if there are performance bonuses. Am I going to get a 13th check? All those type of things. And then thirdly, if your third thing is fit, you need to find out what the culture is within that company. What are the values of the company? Because if your values do not align with the company's values, you're not going to fit. So if I could give advice today on how to make sure you fit in either corporate, a startup, or being an entrepreneur, and etc., then I will assess that 5 F's. And I will say it again: family, fortune, fit, fun, and freedom. Now, just to break it up, so for my top 3 is freedom, because I want the autonomy to work by myself or do what I would like to do. That's the thing. And then secondly, my family is very important to me, my family and friends. So if I have to go to a dinner or, or I need to be there for my friends, maybe they go to a hospital and all those type of things, I need my manager or the company to understand that that is important for me. And then thirdly, for me, it's fit. I always need to be part of a culture that is aligned with my values. So after I've assessed this, before I left my previous company, I said, okay, maybe going on my own is the best because I can actually manage all three of these requirements that I have. And that's what I said earlier. Yes, a company chooses you, but you need to make sure you choose a company. So if you want fortune in your life or stability and maybe fit and maybe fun, where you have a Friday braai or you have these kickoffs and all of that, then maybe a corporate is the best because they have that type of structure already in place, and you might feel that you've got more stability. If you are somebody that wants stability, I don't necessarily think you will just go into something that just started because you need that specific stability. I hope I've answered your question there.
I think that's an amazing and quite an easy way to assess the fit. I love that. I've actually never heard of the 5 Fs, and I think that's a very powerful way to analyze.
Actually, a fantastic book called Who. It's literally Who, and it's by Randy, Jeff Street and Randy. I can't remember now, but yeah, Jeff Street is one of the authors. It's a fantastic book when it comes to aligning your talent management strategies. But it's not just for employers. I think candidates can also benefit from that book very, very nicely.
Just to add what Leandi is saying, I think it's a fantastic formula. I think what I've also realized is that, I mean, if you've got a 40-year career, you're going to go through different phases of your life in terms of those factors, obviously. So it's going to evolve as well. So in your younger days, obviously, you don't mind working in Joburg and not having, you don't have the responsibilities or the people to look after. So your requirement in terms of what you want from a career is obviously going to be different. And then you're going to want to start a family. Then those priorities are going to shift again, basically. And I think it's okay to be kind of situational as well and be flexible and understand that your career will evolve and your requirements for what you want. The worst thing you can do is pick a career and think that it's going to fit you your whole life, basically, because you're going to be changing all the time. What you want is going to change. Your passions are going to change, your interests, whatever. Your family and your friends and your network is going to change. And almost accepting and embracing the fact that it's okay to evolve your career, to move from a startup to a corporate, and from a corporate to start your own business, to be a bit of a free agent as well and start your own business. These are all opportunities, and they all got pros and cons, obviously. And if you've got the self-awareness to look at those 5 things that Leandi mentioned and be honest with yourself in terms of what those priorities are, then you can start matching your 40-year career or 30-year career to match that, actually, and be comfortable with the fact that you'll move, actually. Gone are the days where it was a negative thing. Oh, you only stayed there for 3 years. What's that about? Whatever. I'm like, no, that's not a negative thing anymore. I stayed there for 3 years because I only wanted to stay there for 3 years, basically, because I got what I wanted, and now I'm going to change. I'm going to pivot because I want to apply those skills that I learned now in my own job or in a startup or home business and things like that. I want more freedom. I'm going to start a family. I'm going to rather do a part-time home business, basically, as well. So having that self-awareness, and obviously as a young person, I mean, I remember when I was young, I mean, I don't even think I knew what the word self-awareness was, actually. But luckily I had some interesting people around me that made sure that I wasn't in an echo chamber, that I wasn't just in my own head, because you can lie to yourself as well about your own ambitions and what's important, whatever. As a young person, obviously, it's important to have strong mentors around you, either professional and personal mentors as well, that can challenge you, actually, and say, no, you're full of shit. No, that's not going to work, whatever. That's not you. I remember one of those amazing people that I knew in the Fushini group was Martin Mendelsohn. He was a board member, and I was actually a relationship manager at the time, and I was looking after his division. And I kind of picked him up as a mentor, because I had a lot of meetings with him, and I started having career discussions with him as well. And I see myself as a bit of a creative person, and I like to get involved with creative stuff now and then. And I said to him, listen, people always tell me that I should go into, and then I'm in IT, obviously. And I said to him, listen, people always tell me I should go into marketing or I should go into, and he says to me, Marius, you're good at working with people. If you want to be creative, draw a picture, but stick with people, because that's your strength, whatever. So, I mean, having people like that can say those things to you, and they can make you think and challenge you to actually, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong necessarily, but somebody that can be a sounding board for you, that can guide you a little bit, can prompt you to think about certain things. I think that's going to help you a lot as a young person to kind of get those priorities straight as well, and give you that kind of guidance. And the mentorships are so key. I mean, in Girls in Tech, that's a big part of what we want to do, is provide that mentorship for young girls, from grade 8 and up into school leavers as well, because that mentorship is so key to just give that kind of guidance. And I don't think we always realize how it's missing in our society. Having strong, specifically female, strong in the tech industry leaders that can guide those people to make those decisions, to see the opportunities, to challenge the status quo, to say, listen, no, tech is not just for boys. I mean, there's so many opportunities in technology for women to get involved in, actually, that can be not just personally rewarding, but financially rewarding as well. So I think mentorships are quite key, and mentorship can really help in terms of defining and clarifying what those 5 priorities are for you, specifically when you're younger. As you get older, you get a little bit wiser, and you probably know what you want and what those priorities are. But the mentorships are going to be quite key, and don't wait for somebody to offer you a mentorship. Go and find people. Look at people around you. Look at your network. Look at your friends and family and people that you work for, and go to them. And people are always willing to give advice. That's just human nature. And if somebody comes up to me and says, listen, do you mind if I just chat to you a bit now and then about my career, and I want you to tell me what you think? Absolutely. I mean, why not? Obviously, it's a great compliment if somebody wants you to, give them some feedback or some advice, or just be a sounding board sometime. So the best advice that I would give anybody that's just starting out in their careers, look around, find a strong mentor, and build that relationship and get that feedback, and use that mentorship to guide your career,
I would like to invite, sorry, Krystle, we don't know when you talk, but like Marius said, I would like to, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always there if you do need to ask a question. It's very easy just to respond and give you some direction. I think many times people are too afraid to ask, but please, that's why we're there. That's why we're there. So yeah, please connect and send your messages.
Amazing. That's really awesome, Leandi. So I was actually just going to say that Marius jumped right ahead and answered my last question. So you've already answered Marius. And I love that, because I've also had a mentor in my life that's added so much value and actually helped shape me into the person that I am. So that's really valuable advice. And if I could just ask you before we end off, Leandi, what is a piece of advice that you could leave us with before we end the webinar today?
I think if I have to give advice on something that maybe pulled me through all these years of not knowing what I wanted to do, is to trust your instincts. And always push forward, because you never know what the next day will have in store for you. And if you're dedicated and you work hard and you want to be successful, then giving up is not an option. And speak to people that you're close with, find a mentor, and network with other people, because we are never too old to learn something new. And always be open-minded to actually accept other people's advice and information they give to you as well.
Amazing. That is a really great piece of advice. And I would like to, we've gone over a little bit, but that was so interesting. I feel like we could talk another hour. In fact, there's so many things that we could unpack. But I'd like to thank you for your time today.